South Park is by far one of the biggest titans in the realm of television animation and has been for nearly 30 years now. So much so that studios have been actively fighting for the show's streaming rights because of how much of a valuable property it is. The show is currently in limbo because of Paramount's mishandling of it though, and they have no one but themselves to blame for not only Warner Brothers and HBO Max for turning their backs on them, but the show's own creators as well. But what if I told you that we were almost in a timeline where none of this was the case? Where the show wasn't the long-running juggernaut that it is today? Because there's an episode from earlier in the show's run that was so vehemently hated when it first aired, that it nearly killed the show's enduring popularity. And even to this day, it's considered to be one of the worst episodes of the entire series, with it currently listed as the lowest rated episode of South Park on IMDb. But first, we need to go back all the way to the end of Season 1 to provide a little bit of context. With the show's 15th episode, Cartman's mom is a dirty slut. The premise of it centers around Cartman wondering who the identity of his real father is, after realizing all of his friends live with one and not him. After he realizes that it was most likely someone that his mother had met at an annual party called the Drunken Barn Dance, he interrogates several people who attended the party that night, only to learn that she actually had intercourse with multiple different people. Thankfully, with the help of a scientist named Dr. Mephisto, they're able to perform a DNA test to solve the mystery of who his real dad is. With all the candidates being a Native American named Chief Runningwater, Chef, Dr. Mephisto himself and his assistant, Mr. Garrison, Jimbo, Officer Barbrady, Ned, Gerald Broflovsky, and the entire 1989 Denver Broncos. The episode ultimately ended on a cliffhanger with the announcement that the answer wouldn't be revealed until the next episode a few weeks later. But it was undeniable that this was the episode where the show's popularity had officially peaked, with it being the most watched episode in the entire series during its original broadcast, and it has still accumulated more views than any other episode since. So naturally, the next episode where fans would learn the outcome of the mystery that was on everyone's minds was highly anticipated. The day had finally come where Season 2 premiered, but it turned out that creators Trey Parker and Matt Stone had something much more unexpected up their sleeves.
Now finally, the shocking truth about Cartman's lineage will not be seen tonight so that we can bring you the following special presentation.
It turned out that their follow-up to one of the most popular episodes to date would be a completely unrelated April Fool's episode, conceived as an elaborate prank on the show's fans. Terrence and Phillip, Not Without My Anus, largely ignores the mystery that had been set up at the end of the previous episode, in favor of a fictionalized story centered around the recurring characters of Terrence and Phillip trying to save Canada from an evil uprising. And audiences were absolutely furious. Comedy Central subsequently received 2,000 angry emails from fans within a week of the episode's release. Some even went as far as claiming the episode had officially killed the South Park phenomenon, and the show would never be the same again. Comedy Central subsequently moved up the release of the very next episode, Cartman's Mom is Still a Dirty Slut, in response to all the backlash. But is the episode itself all that bad? Putting aside the fact that the creators had intentionally trolled their own audience, is this really the worst episode of the entire series? Spoiler alert, no it's not. And I think despite the somewhat repetitive toilet humor sprinkled throughout, there's still a lot of that unique South Park charm to be found in it. And it's also undeniable, regardless of your thoughts on it, that it would have been better received had it not been presented as a prank on the audience. Watching this episode when I was a kid made me feel nothing. I felt like it was a giant waste of time that was nothing but crude and immature humor stretched thin for 22 minutes. But now, as a much more devoted South Park fan, I realize there's not much about the jokes, story, or presentation in it that was phoned in or lazy in the slightest. Putting aside the dumb farts and whatever, there's some really funny jokes in the episode that you could tell were cleverly thought out, especially one involving a character named Ugly Bob, who everyone thinks is hideous despite his normal-looking appearance. The tone as a whole is also considerably more absurd and random than anything from Season 1 by comparison, which I think is appropriate given the characterization of Terrence and Phillip in the show, and it allowed for some hilarious gags that caught me off guard in a good way. What also may surprise some people is it also marked the introduction of Saddam Hussein in the entire franchise, who was subsequently the main villain in the show's theatrical movie released a year later, South Park Bigger, Longer, and Uncut. The episode even ends with a short little musical number to cap off the entire package. I can't say I love the episode, but I would certainly never say I hate it. Terrence and Phillip Not Without My Anus is far from the best episodes, but I would certainly never call it among the show's weakest episodes either. I just appreciate the fact that they were willing to experiment like this, even as far back as the show's second season, when other showrunners and writers in Trey and Matt's position would play it a lot safer. And I think it's for this reason why they both would go on to call it their favorite episode they've ever done.
Terrence and Phillip Not Without My Anus, which is our favorite episode. And it really is. I know we always say that, but this one really is our favorite episode. And it didn't go over very well.
Most of America hated it.
And because they were like, well, who's Cartman's dad? Who's Cartman's dad? And everyone sat through this episode waiting to see who Cartman's dad was, and didn't get to really experience the beauty and the awesomeness of this episode.
The storyline from the previous episode officially picked back up, where the creators gave a very safe explanation as to who Cartman's real father was. And they claimed that Cartman's mom was a hermaphrodite who represented his mother and father. This would eventually be debunked years later in the episode 201, where they would reveal Cartman did have a real father, and it resulted in one of the most insane twists that the show had ever cooked up. Trey and Matt would go on record about their distaste for how Season 2 came out, which they claimed was responsible for the show's decline in popularity until the release of the movie in 1999. In fact, you could argue that the show's biggest success would not exist at all without its greatest failure. Many of the elements from Terrence and Phillip Not Without My Anus would later be reused in Bigger, Longer, and Uncut just a year later, such as the aforementioned reappearance of Saddam Hussein, and similar plot beats such as the tensions between the US and Canada. While it wasn't exactly a sign of good things for the time, it did serve as a blueprint for better things to come. I think now that the dust has long settled and the show has only continued to endure since then, we're able to look back fondly on it as a charming little time capsule of a bygone era. And now the outrage the episode had received will most likely baffle any newcomers to the franchise. What happened is that at the end of season 1, it had this whole plot centered around finding out who Cartman's real father was, and it ended on a cliffhanger, so fans had to wait months for season 2 to premiere to find out who Cartman's father was, but they played a bait and switch on the audience and cut to some random Terrence and Phillip episode for the season 2 premiere. So a lot of fans were left unhappy.
Oh, come on. Really? People got mad at a comedy show trying to be funny?
Despite its shortcomings, it's an episode I'd at least recommend checking out once for any fans of the show like myself, because at the end of the day, it alright.